Welcome to Dysfictional, the RPG-focused podcast stuck in a box without air holes under a pine tree. I'm Rainer, the random generator.
I'm Ginger, professional film industry victim. Why a pine tree?
I'm Tukey, former academic and full of Christmas cheer.
Yay, Grimace!
Yay.
Yay.
Yeah, you always were kind of a Grinch.
Wow.
Aww. It's funny because you're the most Christmas-obsessed person I literally know.
I mean, maybe.
What? I've had my tree up at least 2 days.
Oh, that's very proactive of you.
Thanks.
I would hope so. It's tomorrow.
I think due to the holiday spirit that we're all in, clearly, we would go over some one-shots for this week.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what you want to do.
Just any one-shots or holiday one-shots?
I mean, holiday one-shots. I feel like we're all probably going to hit around the Christmas. Mine's definitely Christmassy themed. We'll see what you guys got. Tiggy, why don't you start off with one?
Me?
Yeah.
You did have your tree up first.
Yeah.
I know you're trying to be humble, but you did have your tree up before Thanksgiving. So.
All right. Well, I got a bunch of ideas. Okay, so the first idea for a one shot would be a winter festival. So this one would be essentially based off of like a winter games type style. And it could be either a complete independent one shot, or it could even use people's pre-existing characters if you're in the middle of a campaign already ongoing. But it's essentially meant to be a break from normal game style, normal D&D style. So this one would be essentially set in some sort of village up in the north, where it's the time of year where there's games and competitions going on. And all of the player characters are competing in these games to try to win. And there could be a whole bunch of various games. So maybe a snowball fight, maybe an ice skating race, a sled race, ice sculpting competition, and even axe throwing or other ideas that you may have. Each one of these different games would have different rules to them, different checks the players would have to do. I thought for the ice sculpting would be kind of cool is everybody creates a design ahead of time before this one shot. And then based on how good your checks are in game is how close you get to your actual design. And then there's some sort of voting after the fact.
Ooh.
Yeah, kind of like an anonymous voting. But yeah, the goal would be to compete in these different games. The snowball fight would actually be sort of like a combat. You'd have initiative and everything, but everyone would just be attacking with a snowball, which it could be kind of fun. And at the end, you'd run through all these different games, tally up the points, and I figured the top winner or top two, depending on how many you have, could get an item or maybe get inspiration for their actual campaign that's going on. So again, this would be a nice one that could be almost like a break from normal campaign.
Nice.
Yeah, it's like a little mini game extravaganza.
What about you, Ginger? You got one?
I do. Mine is also festival based. I kind of have a feeling that maybe a few things might be festival based. It doesn't have to be Christmas. It just has to be winter. It could be any holiday, either sort of a canonical in-game holiday or a holiday that you make up, or something like a candle nights or Festivus, any holiday, winter holiday of your choosing. I'm picturing this as like a level 5-ish one shot because of some of the spells and abilities I think that the players would need to have access to appropriately solve the case.
3rd level.
Yes, exactly. 3rd level spells, level 5 characters. And also it would depend on like the classes and things that they chose, but that would be something you talk about with your players, like prep these types of classes if you wanted something specific. But yeah, there are a few spells in the book that would be handy, but not absolutely necessary, but in case they wanted them. So my idea is that our heroes are invited to attend a lighting festival in which a charming local village of your choice, Village X, decorates their central tree for winter celebrations. At the festival, one child is pulled from the crowd to place the central ornament, like the big finishing ornament on the tree, description of which the DM can choose, and cement the beginning of the official holiday season. However, the next morning, the child will have fallen ill in the night. Further investigation will reveal that anyone who interacted with the child at the party will begin falling ill as well on subsequent days.
Gasp.
A cleric may be able to discern that this is a magical illness and that if unchecked, it will lead to everyone in the village falling into a nearly irreversible sleep. The party must then track the illness to its source and neutralize it. I'm loosely calling this one-shot The Giving Curse.
Ooh.
It's obviously curse-based. Certain NPCs around the town would know the history of the festival, the town, things like that for investigative purposes. If you were questioning, try to get clues. They will know the origin of the ornament, where it came from, and they can help give clues to the party. There are several different solutions to the puzzle that could all work depending on the party, their skills, like your players, creepiness level, things like that. So the basic premise is the same, but I came up with actually 4 different things that could have happened, kind of like a choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
So a couple of them are more silly and a couple of them are more serious. So the first one is that the main ornament was swapped for a cursed replica as an act of revenge towards the town. And the child contracted the curse by touching the ornament. The second is that the local deity of the town was angered because a town leader has committed a secret atrocity and the deity is punishing the town until the leader confesses. That one's a little darker, maybe like a little spooky if you want it to be. The third possibility is that the child themselves was very sleepy at the festival and wished on the ornament that everyone would get a good night's sleep, and a wild magic surge amplified by the festival's magic made it come true. Oops. So that one's kind of silly. But the fourth one, and my favorite, based on my favorite Christmas story of all time that my Uncle Jack used to read to us every single Christmas Eve, is that an evil wizard cursed the ornament because he hates the noisiness of the holidays and he wished everyone would just shut up.
See, there you go. That's a good one.
And it's basically the Grinch.
Combat with the Grinch.
So you could take it lots of ways.
Yeah, it's cool having like all the options. The players can pick whichever one sounds like better, of course, for them at that time. And then it has a little bit of almost a replay value, but it starts the same, and then all right, which one do you pick this time? Well, we didn't do that one last year, so let's do this one.
Yeah, you could make it kind of like the Grinch in that you retell it every year, and it can get sillier and crazier as time goes on.
Wait, what happens if the adventurers just choose to leave and not solve it?
That's it.
And everybody falls asleep.
Yeah.
Oh.
Or maybe forever, who knows?
Uh-oh.
Dang. I went dark.
Or maybe like 200 years later, somebody comes through town and finds all the sleeping people and has to kiss a whole lot of people to get the whole town to wake back up again. That's the Valentine's Day one shot, is you have to kiss a whole town.
You see, you still got to get that consent, and it's really hard to get consent on sleeping people. So might be asleep for a little bit longer.
It's tricky.
It is tricky.
This sounds like a lot of work. See, I still think it would just easier to walk away.
Yeah, probably. Just let them. I mean, they're really tired.
They
just
look
let them
comfy.
sleep.
So
Yeah. Maybe add a little pillow under them or something.
Yeah, except that one guy who's leaning his head on a table. I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah.
Or the one guy who sort of leaned against the frozen pole and now he's kind of stuck there.
All right. Well, mine is a little bit of a long one, but it is similar to yours where it has multiple routes you could take. But so Santa's workshop, because I'm doing Christmas, but I mean, I guess it could be any workshop, whatever, is empty. Oh my gosh.
Well,
No.
Mrs. Claus has no idea where Santa or the elves went. The new helpers she hired, which is the players, are all that's around, and there's no time left. Mrs. Claus asks each of you to help out and save the holidays. And you'll need to find a way to either bring Santa back, Santa and the gnomes back, or save Christmas yourselves. This one would have like 6 custom. I say 6, but however many. 6 is a good number for extra players, but there'll be custom characters already laid out for the players just to pick one, each with abilities specifically designed to complete the tasks. Some easier than others, and every character has a shining moment. And then players can just obviously just pick one and fill it out. So first you have the Freedom View. The Commenter is his name. Kind of like in more of an illusionist. He helped keep the gnomes happy with images of a nice summer beach or a banquet feast in front of them while they were working. You have the Build-A-Worker class, which was Dan, who's a twin, and he prefers tireless objects to build the toys in the workshop. You've got the Gnome-mancer, Don. He's been extremely helpful in picking back up the numbers from the gnomish casualties. He's a necromancer. Then you've got the trainer, whose name is Asher, sort of a beastmaster type who have tamed the reindeers ever since Vixen got loose and killed a few of the gnomes. Vixen's no longer around, but Pacers has taken up his place. Then you've got the designer, whose name is Blitz, and he's sort of the creationer. He was there to make sure the holiday star for children around the world, but was also able to make a replacement for Santa. So should a day like this ever arrive? And then the final person was Season's Blessings Cleric, who's Rance. And he just made sure the gnomes were in tip-top shape and no illnesses or disease would stop them from working.
Kind of sounds like some of these guys maybe saw it coming.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they seemed prepared for this.
Well, yeah. Part one of it, the players got to get the toys complete. So it'd just be like a mini game where you're just creating a certain amount of toys within a few rounds, and you'd use probably DC checks and skills to try to get toys made and the quality of them and stuff. I would throw a few hazards around that they'd need to avoid, such as like poisonous gas or like chemicals or bludgeoning traps for like toy presses or something. Lean into chemicals if you got Rants in the party. Don, Dan, and Blitz make it easier for this since they gain advantage on these kinds of checks as they can control creatures. If you free the gnomes first, then the gnomes basically handle the hazards and the players can choose to help the workers, especially healing the workers or use like objectomancy or necromancy or just participating yourselves really. And then part two is just sending the presents out. You'll have to get like the animals to behave and they're hostile to anyone but Santa. And you either like fight them to a certain threshold to submit or use animal handling and tools. I mean, they're going to attack you regardless. So, whichever is easiest for you. You got people like Asher or Blitz, who Asher could help reduce the numbers of the fight and make advantage for animal handling. You've got Blitz, who reduces the hostility of them by creating a Santa, making the threshold required to defeat them less. And then Cometer, the creator, could kind of replace either of them, but it's not as effective. And then once they're in line, you hand out the presents and yay, Christmas is saved. And if you free Santa first, then combat's not required, but you still have to round them up for the sleigh, of course. But if you go the other route where you're just going to try to free Santa, then you're going to run around the factory. It just functions similar to create the toys, except the toys attack the players, as well as you still want to avoid hazards, and they'll uncover clues about what's happened with everyone and where they even might be. Once you find Santa and the gnomes, they're in the cellar, and they appear to be trapped inside of a giant snow globe that you have to fight the snow globe and break Santa free, and it would do like cold and prismatic like abilities and have a special reaction that can refract attacks or something. And after defeating the globe, Santa's free and everything is great again. Or is it?
Uh-oh.
Dun 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 dun.
Dun 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 is right, because there's a secret third part. If the players venture to Mr. or Mrs. Claus's room prior to completing anything, they'll uncover the truth.
Oh no.
We can't handle the truth.
Yeah, Mr. Claus and the gnomes are being forced to work under Mrs. Claus.
What?
They were working day in and day out so she can get rich from Claus coins. And
What?
to make matters worse, each of you were hired to replace Santa and the elves. Or gnomes, really. So if you find that out and confront her, you'll have to defeat her and her ornamentals.
Dun dun dun.
And if you uncover this before freeing Santa, you probably won't find Santa or the gnomes in the cellar. In fact, you probably won't find them at all. Never to be heard from again. The reindeers being the only hint as to what might have happened to them. Santa and the gnomes retired to Miami.
Oh,
This one has a lot of different directions to go.
Thanks.
I do like the pre-made characters as well. Like when you're sitting down to do a one shot, it's like a lot of work to make a character, and sometimes you don't feel like putting that amount of work into just something for a one-time use.
Agreed.
So the pre-made ones is good. I also really like Tuki's idea where you're your normal character, but you're just like in a different setting for a day, and that's a lot less work as well. But having the pre-made ones in this particular way especially makes it feel a lot like an asylum game or something where it's like, okay, depending on who you pick, depends on how your game is going to go. And that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, especially because you can fudge the classes a little bit. Like some of them are like just wizards and then like flavored a little bit differently. You can give them the spells and the tools necessary to complete the specific task rather than them picking out fireball 3 times and you're like, oh, you needed minor illusions. Sorry, try again, you know? So this, then you can tell the players, you're like, hey, everything on your sheet, just about everything on your sheet has a use or a value. So make sure to know it. That way, when opportunities come up that they can use these tools. Yeah, sometimes my fireball might be on there, but hey, combat will happen. So use fireball. But then sometimes you'd be like, oh, but now you might need to use the detect magic that Dawn has or something.
Nice.
Oddly enough, one of the other ideas I had was somewhat similar to this, but obviously yours is way more in depth here. I had the same idea. I had one that was going to be called Saving Santa. Santa had gone missing, and the whole goal was for the party to basically track down and save them. So that part is similar to yours. The only real mechanic I had, though, on the idea for this was it's time sensitive.
Oh, forced one shot.
Yes. So it's essentially the day of, or like the day before Santa has to deliver the presents. And you have 12 hours to get him back. And 20 minutes of real time would cover 1 hour in the game world. So it'd be a 4-hour adventure. And sort of a similar idea. I didn't really have anything too down as far as the puzzles and everything that would, and traps that would have to be solved. But that was the whole mechanic, was that it was essentially a time rush to get him back in time to go deliver all the presents. And I thought that would be kind of cool, forcing people to really stay within like a time limit over and over again while solving puzzles and doing things. And that could be where if they go past a certain time and they don't solve something, that triggers the next part. Or maybe they can't access that anymore and they have to move on to another way.
That's smart because one shots obviously always have that limitation anyway. So building it in, It would also be a fun way to flavor a one shot would be like an episode of 24.
Yeah.
Dun.
The little clock going in the corner.
Yeah, or very like Red One or whatever, just like kind of almost like a Jack Bauer sort of situation, which would be fun too.
Yeah, I like the idea of having a time frame for the players. Sometimes one shots do last more than a whole session. They could be 2 or even 3. We even had my first one shot we talked about with the Turtles was actually 2 sessions, just because the players took a little bit of time, and that was literally my first thing I ever DM'd. So a little bit of getting to know that and how both slow and quickly the players go through things. Sometimes it's lightning speed. But anyway, what I do also like is it's a good concept to build upon, of course, the finding Santa and then kind of building from there. Like, was he kidnapped? Was it Claus coins or something? So kind of adds to the like build from there, like how to make it a good time frame.
Yep. It's always Claus coin.
Is Claus coin a subset of Mipto? Is that a Mipto?
Could be a
Mipto currency
in the D&D world.
Yeah, exactly.
I also had 2 other ideas.
Go for it. That was my one big one.
So my other 2 ideas, I'll save the funner one for last. But the next one I had was called The Toy Maker. So essentially the setup is a group of adventurers are taking a break from their normal pace. They decided to head up north and get a little rest and relaxation in a small town. When they get there, they find that there's a little bit of commotion going on as people are gathered around a flyer from the local famous toy maker. The toy maker is essentially in need of help from adventurers, and this town, as I mentioned, is kind of set far away, doesn't get them that often, and with this group in town, they get sort of coerced into going and helping. Essentially, the toy maker's request is to go into a local dungeon and retrieve an artifact for him, as it's the last piece to create his toys that he needs for this season. And they go in. I don't have a ton of ideas of what the actual dungeon would be. Could be, here's my shallow ideas. It could be kind of like winter themed or holiday themed creatures, or it could just be kind of regular. The point would be, though, once they get towards the end of it, is that they actually don't find anything. And essentially on the way back out, or as they turn to leave, the toy maker is there and he's the final fight for them. And the reason being is the toy maker is actually a necromancer, and the final ingredient is the adventurers themselves, as he needs new creations.
Whoa.
Oh, and here I thought it was the friendship they made along the way.
Well, it was until they got turned into monsters, but this one was a little bit more of almost like a mix of Halloween and winter holidays kind of thing. But yeah, the party would have to defeat the toy maker. And then this is where it could get a little bit funny, because the toy maker is very famous in town. So they would have to somehow explain this all in a way that doesn't get them arrested, or just flee. But that was the idea for that one, is a toy maker necromancer. Makes you wonder what all his toys were.
Yeah. Historically, in a lot of different films and TV shows and novels, toy makers have been some of the creepiest villains
Yep.
that exist. So, yeah, that tracks.
Yep. Yeah, it turns out it wasn't friendship that was the final ingredient. It was their bodies.
Same thing.
Yeah. Then the last one I had, which is kind of a more goofy idea, was kind of the opposite of ones we've been talking about. And instead of saving the holidays, you are ruining the holidays. So
Yay!
the whole goal would be that players are essentially in a town going through like its winter festivals, and they have to ruin the holidays for the town. And they have to hit a certain criteria or goal. I'm thinking each kind of deed or evil deed or destructive deed they do essentially can garner a certain amount of points, or almost like experience in a way. And when they hit a certain threshold, they would achieve their goal. But this could be doing things either loud or stealthy. So the group could be, destroying the presents around, or melting the ice rink, or cutting down trees, and whatever it might be. And each thing they decide to do, so they'll have to explore a little bit. And then each thing they decide to do, they'll have to try to either do it quietly, or if they do it loud, they'll have to deal with the townspeople themselves and the guards. And the whole goal will be basically before they get taken out by the guards, to ruin Christmas for the town and then get out.
This is a very lock, stock, and barrel sort of campaign.
Yeah.
Strat.
Yep.
I think doing a Grinchmas style would be kind of funny. Either, I think a pre-made characters would be fun with that, because you do have, they could do a whole rogue party, which would be kind of funny. But I think it would be hilarious to have that one guy who's like, no, I'm going to be the barbarian and just distract the guards as long as I can. And just make it just the most amount of crap over on this side, while you guys are on the other side of town just stealing toys.
Or like a drunken fighter style monk that's like, oh no, I tripped and I broke. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. Oh no, I knocked your tree into the fire. Oh, I didn't mean to.
I even had this as like not a truly evil thing. It was more of like a chaotic, goofy, lighthearted thing. So I like those ideas.
Oh no, I took out 4 guards.
Oh no.
Yeah, Jackie Chan style, like with a ladder or something.
Yeah,
like, oh, I was just trying to carry this ladder. And then, yeah.
You're trying to pick up your ale, but they had swung a punch at you and they punched the other guard. And then you kind of fell backward. Yeah, it'd be great.
Like you actually didn't do anything.
Yeah. You're just an innocent bystander the whole time.
Make a performance check.
Yeah, that'd be hilarious. I think that'd be kind of fun to do.
That would be fun. I just had a spontaneous idea that I didn't think about beforehand,
Dun, dun, dun.
which is anything Home Alone style.
Ooh.
Castle defense.
Yeah.
That's it. Just Home Alone as a one shot would be fun, I think.
The depth.
100%.
Instead of avoiding traps, you're making and setting up the trap. Like you get a certain amount of the time in the session to lay all the traps, and then it starts to run after that, and you have to see like how good you did.
That would be fun to basically give them like, say, like an hour, maybe even more, to just try to set up as much. Like they're given the map, here's the layout and everything. Maybe give them some examples of traps and then kind of go from there. But like kind of sky is the limit. The additive of magic could be interesting.
Mm-hmm. I'd say almost you would have to do found items or cantrips only.
Or if you do again like pre-made, then they're given extra spells of that. Because you could do like the warded glyphs and like hold spells in there, and that could be fun. And it could even be something where maybe if they do a certain amount of damage and they just straight up kill them, that they win, but it's very unlikely they would. But if they reach them, it's not a combat. They quote unquote lose, but they can still try to kill them, at the end, just to like have a combat. But I think that they shouldn't be able to reach them would be the ultimate goal on that.
Yeah, like a delay timer where like you're basically trying to hold them off until the cops get there or something.
Yeah.
Not every one shot needs combat.
Or like it can have, challenges and combat style activities, but not every one shot necessarily needs murder.
Wait a minute. Well, I mean, that was all the ideas I had.
Speaking of murder, I feel like the reason why that we don't have air holes in this is because there's sharp teeth and a tongue, and it's very, very acidic right now.
Oh, no. You should get out.
Wait, what? Welcome to Dissectional, a segment where we explore the ins and outs of all creatures, great and small, spooky and silly, wild and wonderful. And tonight, we will be looking at a classic D&D icon, the Mimic. These stationary stealth slaughterers take the shape and appearance of inanimate objects and lure their prey in and entrap them with their sticky embrace. But don't mistake them for a species of blockheads. Some mimics are intelligent and can even speak their own language. Whether you are a wizard who uses them to guard your treasure, an adventurer in search of secret loot, or an overly protective librarian trying to keep your books dry, the chances of running into a mimic on your travels are high. And I know that all of us here have had fun encounter ourselves in one of our campaigns. Tukey, what's your favorite or most terrifying fact about the dittos of D&D?
I mean, I ended up inside of a giant one, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of unclear exactly what that was.
Yeah, it was a mimic tavern.
Yeah. And I got 25 feet away from it, and apparently I should have stayed 30 feet away from it.
Yeah,
so I got eaten.
25-foot reach.
Someone rolled a nat 1.
Yeah.
Yep.
And coming in to save you nearly killed us all. So that was one of the closer times we've come to an accidental TPK.
Yeah, that was the first of many deaths of my character in that campaign. But anyway, about the Mimic, I always find mimics just really cool, like a cool idea in general, especially because they basically are what everybody wants, right? Or they mimic what everybody wants. That chest just sitting there and you're like, I finally got my loot. And no, then you just get eaten instead.
They're one of the most iconic creatures of D&D. Yeah, you got liches and stuff, but everyone knows the horrors of a mimic or the unknown horrors of it. Especially once you've had your first encounter with a mimic. After that, every chest, everything that mimic was is questionable.
Potentially
to you now.
a mimic.
Yeah, is potentially another mimic. And especially once a DM like introduces it, it also adds into that, well, he's done it once. Like my first mimic was a torch. And when they did it, it was a fire elemental mimic. So that it just like burned area. It didn't actually hurt the players and stuff, but it was part of my one shot. It was a fun idea from me seeing a mimic like that. But the fact that you can fabricate them into literally whatever you want. Like, again, he got attacked by a mimic tavern. They can have them as weapons and all these other things that sky's the limit. You've seen an idea where it was a potion and then they wait for that day where they're at 5 health and then they drink the potion and then someone bites their lips because it was a mimic.
And they're
yeah,
gone.
when I read that idea, I was like, new fear unlocked.
Now I just have an idea for a character that their entire existence, they just think everything is a mimic and they're constantly checking every single thing. But anyway.
They're an interesting creature because they stay stationary and motionless for extremely long periods of time, almost like a lot of sea creatures do.
Mm-hmm.
And then they wait for the prey to actually come to them, and then that's when they attack. They have like adhesive to make sure that you stay there while they eat you, and then they have a nice acid that'll break you down.
Their hunting strategy in general is super sound. I mean, again, they are what people are going to be attracted to. People might have their guard down at that point because maybe they just fought something or maybe they just got to this area and, man, they're excited about opening up that item or sitting in that seat after a long day.
Or opening that door.
Exactly. And they also have the ability, or just in general, their shape-shifting ability of mimicking all kinds of basic materials makes them pretty flexible as far as what they could turn into.
Yeah, I didn't actually realize that they could also look like stone and things like that. I think you see them depicted so often as wooden objects, like chairs, tables, chests, things like that. But they could also look like a really sturdy iron chest that you wouldn't think would be a creature or something. So yeah, very sneaky, definitely ambush predator. Some of the scariest things in the ocean, I think, are actually like pretty benign creatures, but are ambush predators that basically can just swallow you whole. When I used to scuba dive a lot, we were always on the lookout for the Goliath groupers because they can get like 500-600 pounds and they like to live on wrecks. And when you go by a wreck, you can feel sometimes the current pulling you into the wreck where there's one sitting because it's breathing in and it's so big that it creates a current when it breathes. And when they strike, they're so fast. And that's how I think of a mimic is like you're just walking past something in a hallway or you just go to open a door and before you know it, you're like taking acid damage. It's really kind of scary.
Yeah. And not only do they have a pretty good stealth check, but they also have a lot of strength for a fairly low CR creature. So they can pretty well hold their prey there.
Yeah, I mean, stat-wise, I think they're actually decent overall for, like you said, a low CR. I mean, their intelligence and charisma is kind of low, but I mean, do they even need the intelligence when they have all of this natural instinctive strategy for ambushing, basically?
Yeah, and low CR kind of lends into a creature like that would constantly attack until it either gets the prey or probably dies.
The sticky substance grapples, right, on contact. Like basically you just become grappled and then they get advantage on all of their attacks against you while you're grappled.
Yep.
So they have pretty instant advantages. Like basically if you've touched it at all, you're already behind the 8-ball on that one.
I do find it interesting that, I mean, I guess this one makes sense. I know in the case that we ran into the Mimic Tavern, there was a whole bunch of them inside as well, but I think the mimics tend to hunt alone or live alone. And I guess that kind of makes sense, right? Because if there was suddenly a room with 10 chests in it, it would be probably a little more suspicious if there was just a room with a single one. But yeah, they I think they do tend to typically stay by themselves. They will share their hunting environment if there's other creatures, because again, they're not overly strong, right? But I think as far as having multiple mimics in an area, they tend to be more solo.
I think also they would be better as a group if they were different forms. Like you say 10 chests, but one of them could be the door that you open, and then the other one could be the chest. It was a mimic. Haha, there was a mimic within a mimic. You're like, no!
It's Russian nesting dolls, but mimics.
Yeah, exactly.
It's also very rare, but not entirely impossible, for a mimic to evolve some level of common or undercommon. So I think these super rare ones can potentially even form a conversation. I think it would be pretty limited. And this is a really rare thing, but It is possible for that to happen.
Yeah, there were very rare instances, but enough that, you could say that it's a trend where at times throughout history, certain groups of people have tried to domesticate them. The example I gave in my intro of librarians using them to keep books dry made me laugh really hard because I was like, yeah, sure, there's no other way to do that. Try to train a carnivorous mimic species, to protect things. So one of the potential origins for the mimic is that a wizard created them to guard their treasure trove, and things like that are really fun. And so in sort of that vein of thinking, as far as how I would, if I was the DM, how I would use them, I don't think this is a monster you necessarily use to try to kill the party, even though Randy did almost succeed.
Yeah.
That almost succeeding was also due to your nat 1 right off the top.
I mean,
so that was a
yeah.
little bit of a special circumstance, but I don't think we went into that encounter thinking, oh, this is going to be a TPK. Also, our paladin sat out. So, I think we could have survived either way. And we did survive, but it was a close thing. But as a DM myself, I don't think I would be attempting to kill the party as much as I would just be attempting to drastically either inconvenience or fool the party. And I think that one thing that could be fun to do would build a secret mimic into like the lore of an area. Like if you had a ruler, say an elven ruler that was like highly opposed, but just had been ruling for like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and like no one could ever dethrone them, and no one ever figured out why, like none of the coups ever worked or anything. And then it turns out that the throne itself is a mimic that the actual king trained to be used to his presence. And if anyone else sits on it, they get eaten or something. Build them into the environment somehow. I think the ideas can be limitless with these guys.
Well, I mean, if I was going to kill one, my first go-to, and I guess this would depend, they're technically mimicking the appearance of basic material, so I don't know if their like skin actually becomes that or not. I mean, if it did and they had any metal on them, I would obviously heat metal. I don't know if that necessarily would work.
It seems like they're more like, they kind of remind me of like a cuttlefish. Like they have capillaries and they can bring the different colors to the surface. So I think it is a mimicry.
Mimicking,
I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they do supposedly revert into their natural form, which is kind of like an ooze.
Yeah.
Or
They are a
goo.
shape changer. I would consider them almost like how a werewolf, would have that extra layer. But if they revert back, they're not like terribly scarred from their werewolf side.
Well, then in that case, I would let it grab me and grapple me, heat metal on my armor, and misty step out of the armor. Perfect. In all seriousness, no fire spells. I mean, just give it a good blast,
Yeah, mine's kind of similar. First, I want to also nod in as like non-killing player for DM. Like they're the best monster to play with just mind games with your players. There's nothing there, but they're always going to think it's there. But anyway, as far as like trying to kill a mimic myself, I actually had kind of same idea, just like fire a whole room, but then also just pretty much just like bludgeoning whatever. Like instead of like trying to check the door or something, I'm literally just going to hit that. I'm going to hit the chest. Like you just basically do that love tap on literally everything and finding it out. And then, once you do, you kind of do it. Or you get your friend Steve and then just go throw him there. And while he's being eaten, then you kill the mimic.
Then you heat metal his arm. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing about the mimic is once someone has touched it, someone else in the party is taking damage while you kill the mimic, basically. And the damage could be from the mimic or it could be from you. But it's always like, if you're going to be like, oh, the mimic has Bob and fireball, Bob is also taking the fireball. Like that's part of the trouble of the mimic, is that it causes friendly fire to happen a lot of times. But I do agree with what you were saying. Actually, we were just watching Free Ren the other day, which has become kind of famous for the scenes where she's constantly stuck inside a mimic. And we finally got to the mimic episode, and it was so funny because it's literally just every chest is a mimic. I don't think any of the chests were actually chests. Like, she just keeps falling for the mimic. And Fern keeps being like, it's a mimic, and just hit it with an axe first and check and see. Like, why doesn't anyone ever do that?
I mean, you don't want to damage the things inside.
I guess, but you wouldn't think you'd have to hit it very hard. You could just do that love tap and just see what happens.
Ah, man. Mimics are so much fun.
They are. And like you said, it really is a mind game thing with them. I mean, you could go an entire campaign without a mimic, but it's almost guaranteed that players at some point would think something is a mimic.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I think that's done. So, here you go. Open up your present. Oh my God, it's a mimic. It's a mimic.
Heat metal. Heat metal. All right. We're going to calm things down a little bit with our next segment, which is a holiday special. For this one, we're going to create a creature of our own with a little bit of holiday cheer mixed in. All right, Ginger, why don't you get us kicked off here?
I have come up with a creature. I shall call them the Ornamentals.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Ooh,
Come on, guys. Gee, thank you. Okay. Shifting metallic carnivorous creatures that hunt in groups by mimicking ornamental or shiny baubles. They like to swarm and cover trees or buildings and wait until people approach to strike. They also use this technique to take down birds that covet shiny objects.
Ooh.
No, the birds.
They can be found around mines, especially gemstone ones, and they have slowly moved into towns as societies begun to embrace brightly kitsched decorations. Known to strike on most main holidays, winter festivals hold the most attraction as trinkets are often paired with lights.
And a little history for these ornamentals. Let's say they came from an elemental plane and they sort of evolved into what they are now. So they started by mimicking things around, objects around the environment as a way to survive, kind of mask themselves in their surroundings. But then over time, the variants that sort of lasted were the ones with these shiny objects. And over time, they also started sort of hunting together as a way to survive as well, because they're not quite as strong individually. But then, at some point, they started getting pulled into the primary plane through some holiday magic, we'll say. Maybe highly concentrated holiday magic started bringing them over into the primary plane during certain seasonal events. And they found their way into trees and other places, again, with their sort of ability to look like these shiny baubles. And over time, people even started decorating their own trees with shiny baubles called ornaments, which they named after the ornamentals.
Aww.
Aw, that's sweet.
Yeah, just don't mistake one for an actual ornamental. It's not good.
Yeah, these things are kind of one of a sacrifice the few to save the many style. So they've got a normal sort of hook attack that if they hit the creature with the attack, then they're now attached to that creature, almost like a grapple. The creature they're grappled to can try to pull it out using their action to do a strength check. It's about all they could do, except they have a nice reaction that is called reflection, which they just use their kind of nice coat to almost like shine in their eyes, or sparkles due to all the glitter on them. And attacker spells that hit only the ornamental, they can basically cause it to target a different creature than themselves within range. Their biggest feature is that they have what I call the Death Shatter, which when they die, they explode into shrapnel, which each creature within just 5 feet of them makes a dex save, and they'll take some piercing damage. They'll create a difficult terrain right underneath their body, and if a different creature enters it for the first time, then they just make another dex save that takes some damage, like stepping on glass. This can chain reaction, of course. If you kill one and they explode near another one and they kind of explode. But ideally, they would end up killing off the thing before too many of them die, and then they get to go away free with that. They've got a blind sight that they're blind beyond this radius, but they have a pretty decent blind sight where they just kind of wait around in the trees or caves. They're not super fast, but they're kind of fast, and they're mostly just like Dex, and they got a pretty good charisma due to them being just so pretty and like attracting.
Man, that chain reaction would be so messy, though.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than dropping an entire string of Christmas lights and just watching everything explode.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of us have been there.
Nope.
Well, I think they sound adorable and also sharp. Yeah, sharp.
Yeah, at least the hook is until they explode, and then there are a lot of sharp.
So they're kind of like little holiday wasp swarms, if you think about it.
Ooh,
Aggressive.
waspimentals.
Nah, that's for the next one. Thanks for listening. Tune in to Dysfictional every Tuesday on your favorite podcast app and follow us on Facebook, Blue Sky, or Threads for our latest updates.
Original music for this podcast is provided by Joshua Silver, the artist known as Dimmanon on Spotify.
Gold is tight for everyone out there. So this holiday season, it's okay if all the gifts under your tree are just minor illusion.
Happy holidays.
Can we get this mimic off me now?